much for welcoming me into your county. And thank you, Congressman Doug Lamborn, for being so gracious. You know, I gotta tell you all, being in Washington, D.C., everybody says, how do you do it? How do you put up with this? How do you put up with Nancy Pelosi? How do you put up with AOC? Well, first of all, AOC doesn't even show up to work, does she, Congressman Lamborn? She votes by proxy. She's not even there, so it's fine.
At the bar.
But I'm a mom of 4 boys. I am a restaurant owner. All I know is chaos and dysfunction. DC is right up my alley. I want to encourage you all, though, one of the most surprising and amazing things that I have learned serving in Washington, D.C. at our nation's capital, the People's House, is that there are many principled, righteous men and women who are serving there for their people back at home. Now, when I went to Washington, D.C., I thought surely there were only 4. But there are a whole lot more than that. And you are all so blessed because Congressman Doug Lamborn is one of those righteous men who not only serves you, but serves God each and every day that he is there. Maybe that's because he has Jeannie there with him every day, making sure he's doing that. And she rides around D.C. on her bicycle with her Navy hat. Just adorable. But I just want to bless your team, and you guys have a terrific representative here, and his team is incredible, and it just puts all of you first in serving you. And so that's something that I've just been very encouraged about being in Washington, D.C. Now, we heard a lot about what's going on at the state legislature right now. I think it is fantastic that we are disrupting their agenda, disrupting their narrative to just steamroll the Constitution and run right over Coloradans. Yes, make them read the bill. Any parliamentary procedure that you can do to stall what is happening, do it. We don't have time to be polite and let them do their thing. We need to get in their way. I'm a proud member of the Freedom Caucus in D.C. And these are principled members who actually debate the constitutionality of a bill before it ever goes to the floor, before it's even in committee. We are discussing if this is right or wrong for the country. And we have determined that there's some things in Washington, D.C. we aren't putting up with. We are no longer being polite. And we are disrupting their narrative. How many of you know that there is substantial legislation that passes the House of Representatives without a single member ever voting on it? How many of you know that that happens? It's unanimous consent. And they try to pass it really quickly. Unless there is someone there to object, a whole slew of bills will pass by unanimous consent. And so we have members who monitor the floor. Now listen carefully, we're called the Floor Action Response Team. Very congressional, right? Floor Action Response Team, yes. We make things really smelly for them. But we are there to object. So every member has to put their name to a piece of legislation that is passing the House of Representatives. You deserve to know how your congressman is voting on legislation, and we are making sure that that happens. Now, I'm having the time of my life there because every single day I get to troll liberals. But what they are doing to America is downright disgusting. I serve on the Budget Committee. They don't want bills to come through the Budget Committee. We had a $1.9 trillion budget reconciliation that did not go through the Budget Committee. $1.9 trillion. We still had $1 trillion of unspent COVID money that wasn't touched, and they were coming back to the trough for another $1.9 trillion. not less than 9% of that actually went to anything COVID health related. They fundamentally have ended girls' sports in America, and we're not talking about 8-year-old soccer. We're talking about post-puberty soccer. We're talking about girls who have trained their entire lives in hopes of obtaining a scholarship, and now they have to be worried about being outplayed by a boy. We're talking about women in the MMA rings who are getting their skulls crushed by men. This is happening. We're talking about the threat of being fined by misgendering someone. This is a complete attack on women's rights in America. We know their spending is out of control, and now they're talking about trillions more with their infrastructure plan. It doesn't even go to roads, bridges, ports, airports. It goes towards equity, climate course, social justices, gender studies.
Nancy's Tunnel.
I have a common sense bill, $650 billion. It's the real infrastructure in the plan that they have, and you use the now $2 trillion of unspent COVID money to pay for it. It makes too much sense, they'll never pass it. We have some serious crises that are taking place in our country that are completely unnecessary. We have wars that are taking place in the Middle East now that is completely unnecessary. We had peace in the Middle East. And now, I serve with the Jihad Squad, who refuses to stand with and bless Israel. Our energy crisis is beginning. Because of President Trump and his policies, America was energy independent for the first time in way too long. The first week Biden was in office, his executive orders threw us into a crisis, canceling permits for the Keystone XL pipeline, banning federal leases for oil and gas, a permanent moratorium on drilling in America. This crisis is unnecessary. I don't like paying $3 a gallon for gas.
No way.
After Biden has canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, he then supports Nord Stream, enriching Putin, enriching Russia, and allowing them to be energy dominant. Congressman Chip Roy and I have partnered together to force my Protecting American Energy Jobs Act to the floor for a vote. Nancy Pelosi controls the floor. We don't have any control of the schedule. So we have a discharge petition. Congressman Lamborn, I hope you're on it.
I'm on it.
Okay. We can force this legislation to the floor for a vote. Now, I serve in the Natural Resource Committee, and this was a priority for me because I promised the people back home that I would be their voice, I would fight for them, and I would work for them. Natural resources is very important for Colorado. I've had a lot of fun in that committee. I don't think a lot of people go to Natural Resources to have fun. My very first committee hearing meeting, I had the chairman of the committee withdraw his entire 5-minute statement because he slipped up and I called him out on the parliamentary procedure. Gregory, you'd love it. I had my guns behind me, so it was a little bit fun theater with it too. But that's what you could do with a GED and a whole lot of passion for your country. So I was in a Natural Resource Committee hearing the other day, and I want to share this with you because it was very real to me. There was a man who came on and testified, and he was explaining how he drilled on a rig in North Dakota, and it got my attention. And I got really excited. Oh, we're going to hear the truth about drilling. We're going to hear our side of it. We have a roughneck in the committee hearing room, and we're going to hear how great American energy can be produced, how safe we do it, how we produce it cleaner and better than anyone in the world. Well, Turns out he wasn't just a roughneck, he was more of a fluffneck. So he gets on there and he's talking about when these drilling companies come into a community, there's artificial hyperinflation that takes place. And the cost of living goes up and everything is so expensive and it's so ridiculous because there's a boom. Well, for me, that hyperinflation was not artificial. That's what gave our family a head start. That's what developed schools in my community. We built fire departments. We built hospitals. We built community colleges. We built roads. Our community thrived from that. There was nothing artificial about it. And the only reason it's not there anymore is because Polis wants to regulate us into poverty. So he went on, and he said in North Dakota, the temperature sometimes was negative 38 degrees, and he was not provided a coat. I've seen roughneck wages. You think you can afford a coat? He then went on to say that 1 week he worked a record of 95 hours. And in a 2-week period, he worked 125 hours. And I got on my calculator and said, goodness, that's 13 and a half days, 1 week. For 2 weeks, 12-hour days. 13 and a half hour days, 12-hour days. Then he went on to just say how the work was backbreaking and excruciating. So when my time came to speak, I told him about the success that came from having those companies in our communities. How it gave my family a chance and small businesses a chance. Sure, we had mud on the floor to clean up. That's okay. We liked it. I told him the policies in the Natural Resource Committee right now, under Democrat leadership, are incentivizing this work to go to China and Africa. And in Africa, the 40,000 children that are mining in the Congo, they're not provided with any weather clothing. They're not provided with PPE, the roughneck skit. They don't have a hard hat and safety glasses and gloves and fire-retardant clothing. They don't even have a shovel to mine the cobalt with. And those policies are incentivizing that to continue. Child and slave labor. So I don't need a roughneck in America complaining about making $20 an hour and working 13-hour days, when we have children in Africa suffering like that. This is the kind of nonsense these policies are incentivizing. They would rather outsource to our enemies. They would rather promote child and slave labor than creating American jobs using American resources. They are not in my backyard extremists. And their agenda absolutely has to be stopped. But it's not the only crisis. We have an absolute crisis at our border. I have been down there and I'm going back again. I was at a joint session with Biden and the House of Representatives, and he started talking about immigration. Except he wasn't talking about immigration or the border like he should have been talking about it. He was talking about amnesty. He was not talking about the children who are unaccompanied and being apprehended at our southern border. He was not talking about the mothers who are sending their young daughters on this journey and giving them the Plan B pill before they begin because they expect their daughters to be assaulted. He was not talking about the cartels who are being enriched. He was not talking about the hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens pouring into our country. He was not talking about the airplanes that go to Central America and pick them up, do not test them for COVID, and fly them into our country. As an American citizen, you cannot go into Mexico and come back without a negative COVID test and without an ID. But he's going and picking them up on your dime. So right there in the joint session, now first of all, I don't know how I got invited. Whoever was in charge of that, there are only a few of us, whoever was in charge of that either had no idea what they were doing, or they knew exactly what they were doing. So in the joint session, I was sitting there with Leader McCarthy, Jim Jordan, Chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Andy Biggs, Senator Cruz, and I pulled out my Mylar blanket, and I whipped it on my lap. Because I wanted Biden to be reminded of the children who are wrapped and stacked like baked potatoes at our holding facilities that are more than 1,700% over capacity. Can you imagine if one of your restaurants was 1% over capacity? What the government would come in and do to that business?
That's right.
America is ready to have our freedoms back. And the House of Representatives, Nancy must know something that we don't. Because right there in that little room, COVID is really dangerous. In the hallways, we don't have to wear masks. But as soon as you cross into that room, you better be masked up or you're getting a fine. Well, last week, me and many other members took off our masks and we said, Speaker Pelosi, kiss my mask. You can fine us all you want. We're through. We'll probably take you to court for it because it's not constitutional. But we're done. We're done with this nonsense. Almost everyone there has received their shot, whatever they want to get. You are not holding our freedoms hostage anymore. And if we cede our freedoms at the People's House in D.C., how the heck do you think we're ever going to preserve your freedoms here?
Yeah. Right.
Last year, we saw complete chaos, riots, looting, burning down those small businesses. They want to defund our police officers. We proudly stand with our law enforcement officers. They want to say that you cannot have the police to protect you, and you cannot have a firearm to protect you. Well, we say hell no to that.
Yep. That's right.
Right now, I have 8 Democrats who are running for my seat. And I want to encourage you all, it does not matter which one of them comes out of the primary victorious. I see every day the stronghold Nancy Pelosi has on that party. It does not matter what Democrats promise to rural Colorado. They can make all the promises they want for our water, our agriculture, our ranchers, our farmers, and our Western way of life. But if they were to get this seat, it does not matter. Because they don't work for you. They work for Nancy Pelosi.
Yep.
Nancy Pelosi is my opponent for 2022.
Yep.
A lot of people have asked me, what can we do? I want you guys to stay involved. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but I want you to stay involved locally. I want you to show up to meetings. I want you to go to the school board. Get good people to run for these positions. Go to your city council meetings and your commissioner meetings. Even if you think if everything is running tip-top. We cannot afford to fall asleep and lose any more ground here in Colorado. Representative Stephanie Luck said it very well in Pueblo a few weeks ago. We need you to testify at the state capitol. You can call in virtually, talk to your senator here, talk to Stephanie Luck, and see which issues you can speak to. I've called in, I've spoke to an issue, but they need to hear your voice. Your voice matters. There are bills that are being passed right now, and Democrats are saying, well, no one opposed it, so this must be what the people want. They need to hear your voice, and right now, it is easier than ever for you to get involved. I'll close by saying, I'm here to keep the American dream alive. I'm here for our children and our children's children. I've read the end of the book. I know we win. Yeah. But it takes you and I in this battle to get there. I came from a Democrat household. I know what it's like to depend on government, to think that you could never succeed in life, to stand in line and wait for government cheese. But because of the American dream, I stand here today before you as a United States Congresswoman, and I want that dream to be alive for generations to come. God bless you all, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.